When you swallow a pill, you trust more than just chemistry. You trust a vast system. Beyond active ingredients and coatings, there's an invisible force, trust. You trust your doctor's judgment, the pharmacist's diligence, the factory's precision, and the regulator's vigilance. This trust isn't listed on any label, but it's the real active ingredient in every medicine. Every pill represents a chain of unseen people and processes working perfectly. We rarely think about it, but without trust, even the most advanced medicine is useless. Trust is the foundation of modern healthcare. Without it, nothing works. Trust in medicine is an unspoken handshake, a social contract between patients, doctors, companies, and regulators. Patients accept prescriptions, believing everyone has upheld their end of the bargain. We rely on expertise and integrity, surrendering control in exchange for safety. Society allows companies to profit, expecting patient well-being to come first. Doctors and pharmacists are trusted guides. Regulators are the referees. This web of trust lets the system function. Every confident swallow of a pill is proof of this contract. But what happens if that handshake breaks? Trust is strong but fragile. Like crystal, one break can shatter it. When trust in medicine fails, the consequences ripple through the entire system. Patients question doctors, delay treatment, and health outcomes worsen. Honest professionals are met with skepticism. Ethical companies are tainted by scandal. Regulators face backlash, and innovation slows under new rules. The spirit of collaboration turns defensive. Trust, once lost, is hard to regain. It must be earned and protected every day. In the 1990s, OxyContin arrived as a supposed miracle for chronic pain. Purdue Pharma claimed its controlled-release formula made addiction rare, less than 1%. Backed by aggressive marketing, doctors were convinced, and prescriptions soared. Sales reps, incentives, and sponsored events blurred the line between education and promotion. Doctors, wanting to help, trusted the message and prescribed widely. The promise of safe, effective relief was irresistible. The handshake of trust was offered and accepted. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. The stage was set for disaster. OxyContin's success masked a growing crisis. Many patients found the drug wore off early, leading to withdrawal and cravings. Some took more pills or crushed them for a stronger high, defeating the safety feature. The less than 1% addiction claim unraveled as dependency spread. People from all backgrounds became addicted, and when prescriptions ran out, many turned to the streets or to heroin. The marketing campaign's promises fueled a deadly epidemic. The handshake of trust was breaking. The consequences were devastating. The cracks became impossible to ignore. The fallout was catastrophic. Hundreds of thousands lost to overdose, families and communities destroyed. Lawsuits and investigations revealed Purdue knew the risks but prioritized profit. The company's facade crumbled, exposing a system-wide failure. Doctors felt betrayed, patients deceived. The OxyContin case forced a painful reckoning for the entire industry. Trust, once broken, proved nearly impossible to restore. The lesson: the social contract of trust is medicine's most valuable asset. When it's broken, everyone pays the price in lives. After witnessing the catastrophic collapse of trust in the OxyContin case, it becomes crucial to understand the architecture of the system itself. Who are the key players in this intricate ecosystem? And what specific role does each one play in either building up or breaking down the collective faith we place in medicine? The first and most obvious player is the pharmaceutical industry itself. These are the architects of the system, the innovators who discover, develop, and manufacture the medicines. They are the engine of progress, investing billions of pounds and years of research into creating molecules that can fight disease, alleviate suffering, and extend life. Their work is foundational. Without them, there are no new treatments to discuss. However, this role as innovator comes with an immense and often conflicting responsibility. As commercial entities, pharmaceutical companies must also generate profit to satisfy shareholders and fund future research. This creates a powerful, inherent tension between their public health mission and their business objectives. The OxyContin case showed us what happens when that tension resolves in favor of profit above all else. The industry holds the keys to the scientific data, the manufacturing processes, and the marketing messages. Their integrity in handling these keys, presenting data transparently, ensuring quality rigorously, and marketing ethically, is the first and most critical link in the chain of trust. Next, we have the doctors and the pharmacists. If the industry builds the car, these professionals are the trusted drivers and mechanics we rely on to get us to our destination safely. They are our learned intermediaries, the highly trained gatekeepers who stand between the powerful pharmaceutical industry and the vulnerable patient. A doctor's role is to diagnose our ailments and, using their extensive training and clinical judgment, select the most appropriate treatment from a vast armory of options. They are expected to be lifelong learners, constantly updating their knowledge to keep pace with the relentless advance of medical science, ensuring their decisions are based on evidence, not on advertising. Pharmacists, in turn, are the final checkpoint, the last line of defense in the healthcare system. They do far more than simply count pills and stick labels on bottles. They are medication experts who check prescriptions for safety, accuracy, and potential interactions with other drugs a patient might be taking. They provide crucial counsel to patients on how to take their medicines correctly to maximize benefit and minimize risk. Both doctors and pharmacists wield enormous influence. A patient's trust in a medicine is often a direct extension of the trust they place in the professional who prescribed or dispensed it. Their commitment to ethical practice is a non-negotiable cornerstone of the entire ecosystem. For a very long time, the patient's role in this ecosystem was, largely passive. The traditional model of medicine was paternalistic. The doctor knew best, and the patient's job was to follow instructions without question. They were recipients of care, not active participants in it. However, the information age has completely revolutionized this dynamic. Today's patients are no longer silent partners in their own health journey. Armed with the internet, they have unprecedented access to medical information, from detailed descriptions of their conditions on health websites to the latest clinical trial results, and even reviews of medicines from fellow patients on online forums. The patient has become an empowered and engaged stakeholder. This shift has profound implications for the ecosystem of trust. Patients today are more likely to ask their doctors informed questions about their treatment options. They might come to an appointment having already researched the recommended drug, its side effects, and its alternatives. This is not a challenge to the doctor's authority, but an evolution of the doctor-patient relationship into more of a partnership. This new dynamic demands greater transparency from everyone. It forces doctors to be better communicators, and it puts pressure on the industry to make its data and its practices more accessible and understandable to a lay audience. The empowered patient is a powerful new accountability mechanism. Of course, this empowerment is not without its own set of risks. The vast ocean of information available online contains both treasure and trash. Misinformation and disinformation about health are rampant, spreading rapidly through social media and fueling unfounded fears or promoting unproven, sometimes dangerous cures. This makes the role of the trusted gatekeepers, the doctors and pharmacists, more important than ever. They must not only be experts in medicine, but also skilled guides who can help patients navigate the digital noise, separating credible information from harmful fiction. The patient's trust is now also tied to the belief that their healthcare provider can be an honest broker of information. Ultimately, patients hold the most fundamental key to trust because they are the reason the entire ecosystem exists. Their well-being is the metric by which the system's success or failure must be judged. They are no longer just the subjects of medicine, they are active consumers, critics, and advocates. They join support groups, participate in clinical trials, and share their experiences, creating a powerful collective voice. When they trust the system, they adhere to their treatments, participate in research, and become partners in health. When they lose trust, they disengage, and the entire enterprise loses its moral compass and its ultimate purpose. In any complex system with powerful competing interests, you need a referee. In the world of pharma, that role is played by the regulators. These are the government agencies, like the MHRA in the UK, the FDA in the US, or the CDSKO in India, tasked with a monumental responsibility to protect and promote public health. They are the impartial arbiters who set the rules of the game and are supposed to enforce them without fear or favor. Their job is to ensure that every medicine that reaches the market is safe, effective, and manufactured to the highest quality standards. They are the ultimate guardians of the social contract. The regulators' power is immense. They review the mountains of data from preclinical and clinical trials before deciding whether a new drug can be approved for sale. They inspect manufacturing facilities around the world to ensure they comply with strict regulations. They monitor the safety of drugs once they are on the market, collecting reports of adverse events and taking action, from issuing warnings to ordering a full recall, if a serious problem emerges. They also regulate how medicines can be advertised and promoted, drawing the line between providing information and making misleading claims. Their vigilance is the backstop that is meant to prevent another OxyContin-style crisis from ever happening. For the ecosystem to function, every other stakeholder must have absolute trust in the competence and integrity of the regulator. The industry needs a predictable and science-based regulatory pathway to be able to invest in innovation. Doctors and pharmacists rely on the regulator's stamp of approval as a guarantee that the medicines they prescribe and dispense are legitimate and have been thoroughly vetted. Patients place their ultimate faith in this invisible shield, believing that an expert body is watching over them, protecting them from harm. If trust in the referee is lost, the entire game descends into chaos. However, regulators face constant pressure. They are lobbied by industry, scrutinized by politicians, and often operate with limited resources while facing an ever-increasing workload of complex new therapies. They must perform a delicate balancing act, ensuring that their processes are rigorous enough to guarantee safety, but not so burdensome that they stifle innovation and delay patient access to life-saving new treatments. The strength, independence, and transparency of these regulatory bodies are therefore a direct measure of the health of the entire pharmaceutical ecosystem. They hold the final key, the one that locks the door against chaos and keeps the public safe. Just as we begin to grasp the delicate interplay between the key stakeholders, a new and powerful force enters the arena, poised to reshape the entire landscape. This force is technology. It is not just an incremental change, it is a tidal wave of innovation that is fundamentally altering how we discover, deliver, and experience healthcare. From artificial intelligence to wearable sensors, these new tools are being layered on top of the existing ecosystem, creating both unprecedented opportunities and profound new challenges. This technological tsunami promises a future of more personalized, efficient, and effective medicine. But it also introduces new complexities that we must navigate with extreme care and foresight. On one hand, the potential for good is immense. Consider the role of artificial intelligence. AI algorithms can now analyze vast datasets of medical images, such as X-rays or pathology slides, often detecting signs of disease with a speed and accuracy that can equal or even surpass human experts. In drug discovery, AI can screen billions of potential molecules to identify promising candidates in a fraction of the time it would traditionally take. For the patient, technology offers a new level of engagement. A smartwatch can silently monitor a person's heart rate, alerting them and their doctor to a potential arrhythmia. Smart pill bottles or mobile apps can ping a patient with a reminder when their next dose is due, improving adherence and therefore treatment outcomes. However, every one of these incredible opportunities comes with a corresponding risk. An AI that whispers a second opinion into a doctor's ear could be a powerful co-pilot, but what if its algorithm is flawed or biased against certain patient populations? Who is liable when an AI gets it wrong? A smartwatch that tracks a patient's side effects provides invaluable real-world data, but it also collects a huge amount of sensitive personal health information. Who owns this data? How is it protected and how is it used? Could it be sold to third parties or used by insurers to penalize individuals? The same technology that empowers can also be used to monitor and control. This is the double-edged sword we now face. Technology is a powerful amplifier, It can amplify our ability to heal, to connect, and to understand disease on a deeper level than ever before. But it can also amplify the potential for error, for misuse of data, and for the erosion of privacy. As we integrate these tools into our healthcare system, we are not just adopting new gadgets, we are rewriting the rules of engagement between doctors, patients, and the industry. Navigating this new terrain requires not only technical skill, but also a robust ethical framework to ensure that technology serves humanity and not the other way around. The handshake of trust must now extend into the digital realm. One of the most immediate ways technology is changing the pharma landscape is through marketing. The days of a sales representative being the sole channel of information to a doctor are long gone. We have now entered the age of omnichannel engagement. This is a sophisticated, data-driven strategy where pharmaceutical companies interact with healthcare professionals across a multitude of digital and physical touchpoints. The goal is to create a seamless, personalized, and constant stream of communication. It is a far cry from the simple model of dropping off samples and brochures. It is a highly orchestrated campaign designed for maximum impact and influence. Imagine for a moment a typical week for a busy doctor in this new environment. On Monday, they might receive a targeted email inviting them to a webinar about a new drug hosted by a leading specialist. On Tuesday, a chatbot on a medical news website might pop up, offering to answer their questions about that same drug's clinical trial data. By Thursday, they might see a sponsored post about it in their social media feed. Finally, on Friday, the familiar face of the company's sales representative appears at their clinic door, ready to have a coffee and continue the conversation that has been building all week. Each channel reinforces the others, creating a powerful and pervasive presence for the brand. The opportunity here, from the industry's perspective, is clear. Omnichannel marketing allows for a much more efficient and tailored approach. Companies can use data analytics to understand which doctors are most likely to be interested in their product and what kind of information they prefer to receive. It allows them to reach a wider audience than a physical sales force ever could, at a fraction of the cost. For doctors, it can mean more convenient access to information, allowing them to learn about new treatments on their own terms and schedules. When executed ethically, it can be a valuable educational tool, accelerating the adoption of important new medicines. But the risk is equally significant, and it can be summarized in 2 words: information overload. When does a helpful stream of information become a relentless flood of promotion? How can a doctor distinguish between objective education and carefully curated marketing spin when it is coming at them from all angles, 24/7? There is a real danger that this constant personalized messaging could subtly influence prescribing habits in ways that are not always aligned with the best interests of the patient. It creates a new and more complex version of the old problem, the potential for commercial interests to manipulate the sacred trust between a doctor and their patient, this time using powerful algorithms and digital surveillance. In this rapidly evolving landscape, where technology creates new pressures and marketing becomes ever more sophisticated, a strong legal framework is not just a bureaucratic necessity, it is an essential guardrail. It provides the foundational rules that prevent the entire ecosystem from spinning out of control. India, as a major global player in the pharmaceutical industry, does not leave this critical function to chance or to gentle nudges. A robust, multi-layered legal backbone has been built over decades to govern the industry, and understanding its key components is crucial for anyone operating within this space. These laws are the formal written expression of the social contract. The cornerstone of this framework is the Drugs and Cosmetics Act of 1940. This is the foundational rulebook. It is a comprehensive piece of legislation that governs everything from the import and manufacture of drugs to their sale, distribution, and labeling. It sets the standards for quality and purity that all products must meet and establishes the regulatory bodies responsible for enforcement. Think of it as the Don't Mess Up law. Its primary purpose is to ensure that the medicines available to the Indian public are safe and effective. It is the first line of defense against substandard or counterfeit products entering the supply chain. Alongside this, we have other critical pieces of legislation. The Pharmacy Act of 1948 ensures that the person behind the counter dispensing your medicine is a qualified professional. It regulates the pharmacy profession, setting standards for education and practice to ensure that pharmacists have the expertise required to be effective gatekeepers. Then there are the Indian Medical Council, Professional Conduct, Etiquette and Ethics, Regulations of 2002. These rules specifically target the conduct of doctors, explicitly stating what is and is not acceptable in their interactions with the pharmaceutical industry. For example, these regulations clearly tell doctors that accepting gifts from companies is unethical, aiming to prevent prescribing decisions from being influenced by anything other than the patient's health needs. Finally, while not yet a binding law, the Uniform Code for Pharmaceutical Marketing Practices, or UCPMP, is a vital part of the landscape. This code, currently voluntary but with increasing pressure to make it mandatory, spells out in detail the do's and don'ts of drug promotion. It draws the line between legitimate branding and what could be considered bribery or undue influence. While the opioid crisis demonstrated the devastating effects of lax regulation elsewhere, it is this combination of legal and ethical guardrails that has helped insulate India from some of the worst excesses. They may seem dry or boring, but these rules are absolutely essential. They are the guardrails that keep everyone on the road. While laws and regulations provide the essential guardrails, they can only ever tell you what you can do. They define the legal minimum, the boundary you cannot cross without facing penalties, but they cannot, and do not, always tell you what you should do. This is where ethics comes in. Ethics is the internal compass, the set of principles and values that guides your decisions in the vast grey areas where the rulebook is silent. In the complex world of pharmaceuticals, where decisions can have life or death consequences, this ethical compass is just as important as any law on the books. Consider the dilemma faced by a pharmaceutical executive. They are often wearing two distinct hats. On one hand, they wear the business hat. This hat comes with clear key performance indicators: meet the quarterly sales targets, increase market share, and deliver a return on investment for the shareholders who have funded the company's research. The pressure to perform is immense. On the other hand, they must also wear the health hat. This hat carries a profound, if less quantifiable, responsibility to ensure that the company's actions ultimately serve the well-being of patients. Every major decision involves a choice about which hat will dominate. These real-life dilemmas rarely come with neon-lit signs pointing to the right answer. Imagine a product manager launching a new expensive cancer drug. The law allows them to price it at a level that will maximize revenue, but their ethical compass might whisper a difficult question. At what price point does this life-saving medicine become inaccessible to the very people who need it most? Or think of a sales manager whose team is falling short of its target. The UCPMP code might prohibit overt gifts, but what about sponsoring a medical education event at a lavish resort? It might be legally permissible, but is it ethically sound? Does it serve to educate or to influence? This is why personal integrity matters just as much as corporate policy or government regulation. The culture of an organization, the values it truly lives by, not just the ones it writes on the wall, is shaped by the thousands of individual ethical choices made by its employees every day. It is about choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. It is about having the courage to ask not just can we do this, but should we do this? In the new landscape of powerful technology and sophisticated marketing, this internal ethical GPS is our most important tool for navigation. It is what ensures that even when no one is watching, we are still heading in the right direction. Having explored the intricate ecosystem of trust within a single nation, it is time to zoom out. We must lift our gaze from the local pharmacy and the national rulebook to the vast, interconnected global stage. Before any pill arrives in your hand, it has embarked on a complex journey that transcends borders, navigating a turbulent sea of international regulations, financial markets, and scientific collaborations. To truly understand the forces that shape modern medicine, we must grasp the dynamics of this global pharmaceutical engine. It is honestly a powerful and complex machine, and it runs on a fuel blended from three distinct yet deeply intertwined elements: This is what we can call the triple helix of global pharma. The first strand of this helix is scientific progress. This is the relentless driving force of human ingenuity. It encompasses everything from the foundational research happening in university laboratories to the cutting-edge development inside corporate R&D centers. We are talking about groundbreaking innovations like CRISPR gene editing technology, which offers the potential to correct genetic diseases at their source, or the development of sophisticated artificial intelligence that can predict how a new molecule will behave in the human body. This strand represents the pure, unadulterated quest for knowledge and the translation of that knowledge into tangible therapies that can push back the boundaries of disease. It is the very heart of the entire enterprise. The second strand is public policy mandates. Science does not operate in a vacuum. It operates within a framework of rules, laws, and government strategies set by nations and international bodies. This strand includes everything from the intricate laws that govern intellectual property and patents, deciding who owns an invention and for how long, to the pricing and reimbursement policies that determine whether a new drug is affordable and accessible to a country's population. It also includes industrial policies, such as make it locally incentives or tariffs on imported medicines, which governments use to build their domestic capabilities and ensure their own supply chain security. This strand represents the will of societies to shape the market for their own benefit. The final and arguably most powerful strand of the helix is capital allocation. A single new drug can take over a decade and cost more than £1 billion to bring to market. This colossal undertaking is impossible without massive, sustained financial investment. This capital flows from various sources. Venture capitalists betting on a risky but promising biotech startup, large pharmaceutical companies reinvesting their profits, and public markets where investors buy shares, chasing quarterly earnings and long-term growth. The decisions made by these investors, which diseases to target, which technologies to fund, which companies to back, have a profound impact on the direction of scientific research and the availability of future medicines. Capital is the essential energy that makes the entire engine turn. Now, where does India fit into this swirling, powerful triple helix of global forces? India's position is not just unique, it is strategically pivotal. The nation sits right at the turbulent intersection of these three strands, playing a complex and often challenging dual role. For decades, India has earned and solidified its reputation as the pharmacy of the world. This identity is built on its incredible capacity for high-volume, high-quality and low-cost manufacturing of generic medicines. When patents on blockbuster drugs expire, it is often Indian companies that step in to produce affordable versions, making life-saving treatments for conditions like HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis and diabetes accessible to millions of people in developing countries who would otherwise go without. This role as a world-class supplier of generics places India squarely in the crosshairs of the public policy and capital strands of the helix. The country's patent laws have been carefully designed to balance innovation with access, a policy that has often brought it into conflict with Western nations and multinational corporations who argue for stronger intellectual property protection. At the same time, the flow of capital into India has historically been directed towards perfecting the science of reverse engineering and process chemistry, building massive, efficient factories that can produce pills and simple injectable drugs at an unbeatable scale and cost. This identity is India's established strength, a vital contribution to global health equity. However, a second, more recent identity is now rapidly emerging. India is no longer content to be just a follower and a copier. It is now striving to become an innovator in its own right. The nation is transitioning from simple generics to more complex products like biosimilars and even novel drug discovery. This ambition is changing how India interacts with the triple helix. It requires a new engagement with the science strand, fostering a domestic ecosystem of cutting-edge research and development. It also demands a different kind of investment from the capital strand, shifting from funding factory capacity to funding the high-risk, long-term gamble of original R&D. This duality is the central theme of India's current journey on the world stage. The country must continue to fulfill its crucial role as the provider of affordable medicines for the world, a role that underpins much of its economic and diplomatic power. Yet, simultaneously, it must climb the value chain, investing in science and innovation to create its own intellectual property and compete at the highest levels of the global pharmaceutical industry. Managing this dual identity, being both the world's workhorse and an aspiring racehorse, is the great strategic challenge and opportunity for Indian pharma in the decades to come. It requires a delicate and masterful balancing act. Living at the center of this triple helix means that Indian pharmaceutical companies, and by extension, the Indian government, must become expert navigators. The three strands of science, policy, and capital are not parallel tracks. They are constantly twisting around each other, creating a dynamic and often unpredictable environment. A change in one strand immediately sends ripples through the other two. For example, a scientific breakthrough in a new class of drugs, like the GLP-1 agonists for diabetes and obesity, instantly triggers a race for capital investment and prompts policy debates about pricing and access around the world. Being able to anticipate and react to these shifts is critical for survival and success. Consider the interplay of these forces. A multinational company might use its capital to fund the scientific development of a new cancer drug. Once approved, it will rely on the public policy of strong patent protection in markets like the US and Europe to recoup its investment through high prices. However, the public policy in a country like India might prioritize access, creating provisions for a compulsory license that allows a local company to produce a generic version if the drug is deemed unaffordable. This sets up a direct conflict between the capital interests of the innovator, the scientific reality of the drug's benefit, and the differing policy goals of nations. Indian firms must navigate these tensions every single day. This constant swirl presents both significant threats and tremendous opportunities for India. The threat is that shifts in global policy, such as increased protectionism or changes to international patent agreements, could undermine India's generics-based business model. A sudden change in capital allocation, with investors moving away from one therapeutic area and into another, could leave companies with stranded assets. The ever-accelerating pace of scientific progress means that if Indian R&D does not keep up, the country risks being left behind, relegated to manufacturing only yesterday's technologies. The environment is one of permanent flux, where complacency is not an option. Yet for the prepared and the agile, this turbulence creates openings. The global push for more resilient supply chains in the wake of the pandemic is a massive policy shift that India can capitalize on. The wave of biologic drugs going off patent is a multi-billion-pound scientific and capital opportunity perfectly suited to India's growing expertise in biosimilars. The key for future leaders in Indian pharma is to develop a deep literacy in all three strands of the helix. They must not only understand the science of their products, but also the policy landscape of their key markets and the motivations of the capital that funds their growth. Mastering this is how India will not just survive but lead on the world stage. To truly grasp the scale of the global pharmaceutical stage, we must begin with the numbers as they tell a compelling story of size, power, and shifting momentum. As of early 2024, the total value of the international pharmaceutical market stands at a colossal $1.5 trillion. This is a figure so vast it is difficult to comprehend, dwarfing the GDP of many nations. The traditional mature markets, the United States, the European Union, and Japan continue to command the lion's share of this value thanks to high prices and the rapid uptake of new expensive innovations. However, the story the numbers tell is not just about the present, it is about the future. The most significant growth is no longer happening in these established regions. The needle is tilting decisively towards the east, with the Asia-Pacific region, including India and China, emerging as the new engine of expansion. Within this enormous market, specific therapeutic areas are generating intense heat and attracting the lion's share of investment and attention. These are the current hotspots of innovation and commercial activity. Oncology remains the undisputed king, a nearly $200 billion segment where the launch price for a new therapy can routinely exceed $150,000 per patient per year. This raises critical questions about sustainability and value, a debate that echoes across the globe. Close behind is immunology, where many blockbuster biologic drugs are losing patent protection, creating a nearly $30 billion feast for biosimilar manufacturers. This is a domain where Indian companies with their expertise in complex manufacturing and cost-effective development are already sharpening their knives, ready to claim a significant piece of the pie. The landscape of technological hotspots is equally dynamic. The metabolic disease space has been completely redefined by the rise of GLP-1 agonist drugs that are transforming the treatment of diabetes and obesity and creating a new multi-billion-dollar market almost overnight. Here, Indian contract development and manufacturing organizations, or CDMOs, are playing a crucial high-value role by supplying the complex peptide intermediates required to produce these drugs. This signifies a move up the value chain from simple pills to high-science, high-margin components. Beyond specific drugs, entire technology platforms like AI-driven drug design, continuous manufacturing, and CRISPR-based gene therapies are no longer theoretical concepts. They are approved, commercial realities shaping the future of medicine. This brings us to the flow of capital, specifically the investment in research and development which fuels all this innovation. Globally, R&D spending is a staggering $230 billion annually. India's share of this, at around $10 billion, may seem small in comparison, but it is strategically significant. This investment is not scattered randomly. It is increasingly channeled and amplified through government initiatives like the Production-Linked Incentive, or PLI scheme, and grants from bodies like the Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council, or BIRAC. These programs act like a form of state-sponsored venture capital, de-risking investment in high-potential areas and purposefully directing the flow of capital towards building a self-reliant and innovative domestic industry. The numbers paint a clear picture of a dynamic, shifting global landscape filled with opportunity. The global market is not just a sea of numbers. It is an arena where titans clash and collaborate. The world's largest multinational corporations wield immense power, their strategic decisions shaping health economies across the planet. Their relationship with India is a fascinating and complex dance of mutual interest and strategic calculation. These giants are no longer just selling their finished products to India. They are deeply embedding themselves within the country's industrial and scientific ecosystem. For example, a company like Pfizer operates multiple manufacturing plants in India, producing sterile injectable drugs that are then exported to over 60 countries. This is not just about leveraging low-cost labor, it is about leveraging world-class manufacturing quality and capacity. This integration goes beyond the factory floor and into the realm of knowledge work. Novartis, for instance, has established a massive global development and discovery center in Hyderabad, employing thousands of Indian data scientists, statisticians, and clinical trial experts. This facility is not a back-office support center. It is a critical brain that manages the complex data and documentation required for global drug approvals. Similarly, AstraZeneca runs dozens of oncology trials in India, leveraging the country's diverse patient population to accelerate the discovery of biomarkers and new treatments. When you see an MNC setting up shop in India, the critical question to ask is, what is the direction of the data flow? Is knowledge being created and retained locally? Or is India merely supplying the payroll while the intellectual property flows out? This dance of giants takes place within a peculiar market structure. If you look at revenue, the global pharmaceutical market looks like an oligopoly, a tall skyscraper where the top 10 firms control over 40% of the total revenue. This is because developing and launching a new, innovative biologic drug requires immense capital. A single manufacturing site can cost over $150 million, creating a formidable barrier to entry that only the largest players can overcome. However, if you look at the market in terms of volume, the sheer number of pills produced, it looks more like a sprawling, fragmented bazaar, with thousands of smaller, generic players competing fiercely. India's strength has traditionally been in the bazaar, but its ambition is to build its own skyscrapers. This complex market operates on a global chessboard of regulation. The game is one of constant strategic moves and counter-moves. On one side, you have forces of convergence, like the International Council for Harmonization, or ICH, which seeks to create a single, standardized format for drug approval dossiers, making it easier to launch a product in multiple countries simultaneously. On the other side, you have forces of divergence, with individual nations or blocs creating their own unique rules to protect their interests. A country might demand a high percentage of local content in a product, or use the threat of a compulsory license to negotiate lower prices. Navigating this maze of conflicting rules, corporate strategies, and market structures is the daily reality for any leader in the global pharmaceutical industry. The future of pharmaceutical manufacturing is being rewritten, moving away from the old model of gigantic, centralized factories towards something far more agile, distributed, and responsive. Two key concepts are driving this transformation: technology transfer and modular manufacturing. Technology transfer, or tech transfer, is the process through which knowledge, intellectual property, and manufacturing processes are successfully transferred from one entity to another. The COVID-19 pandemic provided the ultimate stress test and a stunning proof of concept for this. The collaboration between AstraZeneca and the Serum Institute of India became a gold standard case study, demonstrating that it was possible to transfer complex biologic manufacturing technology and scale up to produce over 100 million vaccine doses per month in less than a year. This feat changed the industry's perception of what is possible. This new proven capability in rapid, large-scale tech transfer fundamentally alters strategic calculations for both governments and companies. It proves that manufacturing capacity is not static. It can be deployed where it is needed most, provided the right partnerships and political will are in place. This capability is complemented by the rise of modular manufacturing. Imagine a state-of-the-art biomanufacturing facility, not as a sprawling permanent building, but as a series of container-sized, prefabricated modules, almost like a high-tech Lego set. These biopods, or factories in a box, can be built, validated, and shipped anywhere in the world, then assembled on site in a fraction of the time and cost of a traditional plant. This modular approach is a game-changer for global health security and supply chain resilience. Instead of relying on one or two massive facilities in a single country to supply the entire world, a company or government could establish a network of smaller, decentralized manufacturing hubs. This model, championed by organizations like the WHO and UNIDO, offers a powerful hedge against geopolitical instability, trade disruptions, or future pandemics. If one node in the network goes down, others can ramp up production to fill the gap. It democratizes manufacturing, allowing nations that previously had no biologic production capacity to build their own, ensuring vaccine and drug security for their populations. For a country like India, this modular future presents a dual opportunity. Indian firms can become world leaders in designing, building, and exporting these modular factories, exporting not just a product, but an entire manufacturing capability. At the same time, they can deploy these systems domestically to create a more flexible and resilient production network within India itself. This shift from monolithic plants to modular networks is not just a technical evolution, it is a strategic revolution. It will redraw the map of global pharmaceutical production much faster than patents expire, creating a new logic for how and where the world's medicines are made. Given this dynamic global landscape, with its shifting market hotspots, powerful new technologies, and evolving manufacturing paradigms, Indian pharmaceutical companies stand at a critical strategic crossroads. The path that brought them success over the past 3 decades will not be the same path that leads to success in the next 3. The industry's 2 core jobs, as we have discussed, are to continue serving as the cost-efficient supplier of essential medicines to the world, while simultaneously climbing the value ladder into genuine innovation. The central strategic question for every CEO and board in Indian pharma is how to allocate their finite resources of capital, talent, and time to best manage this dual mandate. It is a classic seesaw balancing act. On one side of the seesaw is the established high-volume, low-margin business of generics and active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs. This is India's powerhouse, but it faces increasing competition and pricing pressure. The strategic imperative here is operational excellence and de-risking. This involves leveraging automation and continuous manufacturing to drive down costs even further. It also means aggressively reducing the nation's dependence on imported raw materials and critical APIs, particularly from China. Government policy is a huge lever here, with initiatives like the development of new bulk drug parks and the Production-Linked Incentive, or PLI, schemes designed specifically to onshore the manufacturing of these essential building blocks and strengthen the foundation of the entire industry. On the other side of the seesaw is the riskier, higher margin, and more aspirational goal of becoming an innovator. This does not necessarily mean discovering a brand new blockbuster molecule from scratch, which remains incredibly expensive and difficult. Instead, the focus is on incremental innovation. This includes developing complex biosimilars, creating novel drug delivery systems that improve an existing medicine, or using R&D to find new uses for older drugs. This path requires a different mindset and a different allocation of capital. It requires investment in top-tier scientific talent, building world-class R&D labs, and having the patience to see long-term projects through to fruition. The key performance indicators, or KPIs, for success are also changing. For the government, success might be measured by reducing import dependence on critical APIs to below 35% by 2030. For the industry, a new benchmark of success might be having 100 Indian-owned patents for drugs in Phase 2 clinical trials, or beyond, by 2032. Every company must decide where it wants to sit on this seesaw. Will it be a pure-play generics champion, a niche innovator, or will it attempt the difficult but potentially rewarding strategy of doing both? The choices made in the boardrooms today will determine which Indian companies will become the global titans of tomorrow. Now let's bring this down from the 30,000-foot strategic view to a concrete decision on your desk. This is where the theory we have discussed becomes practice. Imagine you are the head of strategy at a mid-sized, ambitious Indian pharmaceutical company. You have performed well in the generic space, have a healthy balance sheet, and the board has just approved a special strategic investment fund of 1,000 crore rupees to be deployed over the next 5 years. Your mandate is clear. Place a bet that will define the company's future and deliver the best return on investment. The global landscape is exactly as we have described it. The choice is yours. You have 3 distinct, well-researched proposals in front of you, each with its own profile of risk and reward. Option A is to bet on the future of manufacturing and global health security. You would use the funds to build a network of modular biopod factories across India and potentially in a partner country in Africa, specializing in vaccine production for regional needs. This is a high-impact, politically savvy move that aligns with global trends towards supply chain resilience. The return is steady and long-term, but perhaps not explosive. It positions you as a leader in a new paradigm. Option B is a more conservative but highly strategic bet on the API value chain. You would use the capital to acquire an existing US FDA-approved manufacturing plant that specializes in producing peptide APIs. These are the complex, high-margin building blocks for the booming GLP-1 drug class. This move would make you a critical supplier to major global players and would generate strong, predictable revenue almost immediately. It is less glamorous than building a vaccine network, but it is a direct play into one of the hottest therapeutic areas in the market, strengthening your company's core capabilities. Finally, Option C is a bet on high science and the lucrative biosimilar market. You would invest the 1,000 crore rupees to co-develop a biosimilar version of a promising new TYK2 inhibitor, a next-generation immunology drug. This is a high-risk, high-reward strategy. The R&D is complex and fraught with challenges, and you will face fierce competition. However, if you are one of the first to market, the payoff could be enormous, catapulting your company into the top tier of biologic manufacturers. This is a direct play for the innovator side of the seesaw. So, what is your move? A, B, or C? Think about the rationale, the risk, and the long-term vision. As we draw this comprehensive exploration to a close, it is essential to distill our journey into its most potent, actionable insights. We began by establishing that the single most important active ingredient in any medicine is not chemical, but conceptual. It is trust. This silent handshake between society and the pharmaceutical world is the very foundation upon which the entire ecosystem is built. The devastating case of OxyContin served as our stark reminder of how quickly and catastrophically this trust can be shattered when profit is allowed to eclipse ethics, leaving a legacy of human tragedy and systemic distrust that takes generations to repair. This is not ancient history. It is a living lesson for every decision we make today. We then mapped the intricate web of stakeholders, from the industry architects and the learned gatekeepers in clinics and pharmacies, to the newly empowered patient and the regulatory referees. We saw how each player holds a key, and how the weakening of a single link can cause the entire chain to rattle. Superimposed on this delicate human system is the relentless tsunami of technology, a double-edged sword that offers incredible promise for personalized medicine while simultaneously creating new risks of information overload, data misuse, and sophisticated manipulation. Navigating this requires more than technical skill. It demands a robust ethical framework to guide our choices in this brave new world. Expanding our view to the global stage, we conceptualized the international pharmaceutical engine as a dynamic triple helix of science, public policy, and capital. We identified India's unique and pivotal dual role within this swirl, the established pharmacy of the world and the aspiring emerging innovation hub. This duality presents the central strategic challenge for the nation's industry. Success is no longer just about being a cost-efficient supplier. It is about skillfully climbing the value ladder into incremental innovation, complex biologics, and smart modular manufacturing. The future belongs to those who can masterfully balance both sides of this seesaw. Ultimately, every data point, every case study, and every strategic framework we have discussed converges on a single powerful truth. In the pharmaceutical industry, every decision matters. The choices made in the boardroom, at the lab bench, in the doctor's clinic, and by the regulator have profound, real-world consequences. Knowing the rulebook, from the Drugs and Cosmetics Act to the UCPMP, is the bare minimum. The true challenge, and the mark of a genuine leader, is the commitment to aim higher, guided by an unwavering ethical compass that consistently prioritizes the well-being of the patient above all other considerations. This is the enduring takeaway. So, where do you go from here? This course has been designed not merely to inform you, but to equip you. You are the next generation of leaders who will inherit this complex, high-stakes ecosystem. You will be the ones sitting in the strategist's chair, weighing the options for that 1,000 crore rupee investment. You will be the ones developing the omnichannel marketing campaigns, facing the pressure to meet targets while upholding your ethical duties. You will be the ones navigating the global chessboard of regulation and policy, making choices that will impact the health and lives of millions. The purpose of this journey has been to give you the map, the compass, and a clear view of the terrain ahead. Your first step is to internalize the lessons of the past. Keep the story of the broken handshake front and center in your mind. Use it as a constant litmus test for your own decisions and for the culture of the organizations you will lead. Ask the hard questions relentlessly. Is this marketing campaign truly educational, or is it manipulative? Is this pricing strategy equitable, or does it create unacceptable barriers to access? Is our company's culture one that encourages people to speak up when they see something that feels wrong? Your vigilance is the immune system that will protect the future of this industry from repeating its most painful mistakes. Your next step is to become a lifelong student of the triple helix. The strands of science, policy, and capital are in constant motion, and you must move with them. Follow the scientific journals, but also read the policy papers from government think tanks. Track the flow of venture capital, but also understand the public health priorities of developing nations. Your value as a leader will not come from expertise in a single silo, but from your ability to connect the dots between these powerful forces. This integrated understanding is what separates a mere manager from a true visionary who can spot opportunities and threats before they become obvious to everyone else. Finally, I leave you with a personal challenge. As you build your career, I urge you to define your own non-negotiable ethical red lines before you are faced with a crisis. Decide now what you will and will not do for a promotion, for a bonus, or for a sales target. Write it down. Share it with a mentor. This personal ethical constitution will be your anchor in the turbulent moments that will inevitably come. The pharmaceutical industry offers a chance to have an incredibly rewarding career, one that contributes profoundly to human well-being. Your challenge, and my hope for you, is to build that career on a foundation of integrity, ensuring you not only succeed, but also sleep well at night.